The night was heavy with rain, the kind that blurred the outlines of streetlights and made the asphalt shimmer like liquid glass. Maria tightened her grip on the steering wheel of her old, sputtering sedan as she drove home from her late shift at the diner. It was past midnight, and exhaustion weighed on her shoulders, but the thought of her little boy sleeping soundly back at their apartment kept her focused. She hummed softly to keep herself awake, praying the car would hold up until she made it home. Up ahead, something caught her eye, bright hazard lights flashing on the side of the road. She slowed down, heart pounding a little faster. At first, she thought it might be a car accident, but as she pulled closer, she saw it was a sleek black luxury car, the kind she had only ever seen in magazines. The driver's side window was slightly cracked, and through the dim light, she could make out the silhouette of a man slumped forward. Maria hesitated. She wasn't the kind of person to get involved in strangers' problems, especially not late at night on an empty road, but something about the scene tugged at her conscience. What if the man inside needed help? What if he was hurt? She parked her car a few feet ahead, wiped her damp palms on her uniform skirt, and walked back cautiously, the rain soaking through her thin jacket. She tapped gently on the window. "Sir, are you okay?" The man stirred, his face turning toward her. He was clearly drunk, his eyes half-lidded, his hair tousled, and his expensive suit wrinkled as if he'd been wearing it for hours. Despite the disheveled state, Maria could tell he was someone important. His watch alone probably cost more than she made in a year. He squinted at her, confused. Who are you?" His voice was low, slurred, carrying the weight of whiskey and loneliness. "I'm just someone passing by," Maria replied carefully. "You shouldn't be sitting here. It's not safe. Do you need me to call someone?" The man let out a humorless laugh. "There's no one to call." He leaned back against the seat, staring at the roof of the car as if the ceiling held all his regrets. "They all left me. Everyone." Maria frowned, realizing he was in no state to drive. If he tried to start that car, it could mean disaster. "Listen," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Why don't I drive you home? I don't want you to get into an accident. You can't stay here like this." For a moment, he seemed to consider her words, his glazed eyes meeting hers. Something about her steady gaze must have broken through his drunken fog because he sighed deeply and nodded. "Fine. Keys are somewhere." He fumbled clumsily before handing them to her. Maria opened the door and helped him out. He was tall, unsteady on his feet, and she had to brace herself as he leaned on her for balance. His cologne was expensive but faintly mixed with the sharp tang of alcohol. Together, they made their way to the passenger seat of her sedan. He looked around at the worn interior with mild surprise, as if he had never sat in such an ordinary car before. She slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and glanced at him. "Where do you live?" He mumbled an address, one she recognized as belonging to the wealthiest part of the city. As she drove, the rain drummed steadily on the windshield. For a while, there was only silence, until he spoke again, his voice raw. "You know what it's like," he muttered, staring out the window. "To have everything but still feel empty." Maria's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. She thought of her own life, working double shifts, scraping together enough for rent, trying to give her son the childhood he deserved while burying her own loneliness deep inside. Yes, she knew emptiness, but in a different form. Still, she didn't answer. She simply let him speak, sensing that what he needed most was someone to listen. "I built an empire," he continued, his words tumbling out. "But no one stayed. Not my wife, not my so-called friends. They only cared about what I had, not who I was." He laughed bitterly, then sighed, leaning his head against the window. "What's the point of success if you come home to silence?" Maria's chest tightened. She didn't know this man, didn't know his story beyond the fragments spilling from his drunken lips, but she understood loneliness all too well. Her silence was its own kind of answer, and perhaps that was enough. When they finally reached his address, Maria's eyes widened. The mansion loomed like something out of a movie, gates tall and intimidating, lights illuminating the vast driveway. She stopped the car, unsure if she should help him further, but before she could speak, he turned to her. "Thank you," he said, his words slurring but sincere. "You didn't have to stop. You didn't have to care. But you did." For the first time, Maria noticed the vulnerability in his eyes, hidden beneath the layers of wealth and power. She gave him a small nod. Take care of yourself, okay? He smiled faintly, almost boyishly, before stumbling out of the car. As he disappeared behind the gates, Maria drove off into the rain, not realizing that this simple act of kindness would be the beginning of something that would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Daniel's head pounded like a drum, the bitter taste of whiskey still clinging to his tongue. He sat on the edge of his enormous bed, sunlight spilling through the tall windows of his mansion, illuminating the cold emptiness of the space. His life was a blur of board meetings, power plays, and empty victories, but last night felt different. Through the fog of alcohol, one memory lingered crystal clear, a woman with kind, steady eyes, guiding him safely home when he had been too broken to guide himself. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the faint sting of shame, not just for drinking too much, but for the way he had been living. He was a CEO with hundreds of employees, a man who commanded respect in every boardroom, yet he had been helpless on the side of the road. And it wasn't his wealth or influence that saved him, it was a single mother in a beat-up car who had no reason to stop, yet did. That thought stayed with him all day. Instead of retreating into his usual routine of work and distraction, he found himself restless, replaying her face, her voice, her silence. He wanted, no, needed, to see her again. Maria, meanwhile, had returned to her daily grind. After dropping her son off at school, she hurried back to the diner where she worked double shifts. She was tired but accustomed to exhaustion, it was her reality. She balanced trays of steaming coffee and plates of pancakes, smiling politely at customers while her mind wandered back to last night. She had driven many strangers before, part-time ride-hailing helped supplement her income, but this man was different. There had been something broken in his eyes, something that made her chest ache. She tried to shake it off. After all, he was rich, powerful, and far outside her world. People like him didn't cross paths with people like her more than once. But she was wrong. Late that afternoon, the diner's door chimed, and in walked Daniel. He looked nothing like the disheveled man from the night before. His suit was crisp, his hair neatly styled, his sharp jaw cleanly shaven. To the other waitresses, he was the kind of customer who turned heads. To Maria, he was the man who had mumbled his loneliness in the backseat of her car. Their eyes met, and for a moment, she froze. He offered a small, almost nervous smile. Mind if I sit in your section? Maria blinked, surprised by the question. Most customers didn't care where they sat, but it was clear he had come looking for her. She nodded reluctantly. Sure. Booth or counter? Booth, he said, settling into the seat as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When she approached with her notepad, he didn't look at the menu. Instead, he looked at her. Coffee. And whatever you recommend. Maria frowned slightly, jotting it down. Are you sure? Our food isn't exactly 5-star. That's fine, Daniel replied, his smile widening. Last night wasn't exactly 5-star either, but it saved my life. Her cheeks warmed, though she tried to stay composed. You were drunk. I just didn't want you to hurt yourself, or anyone else. And for that, I'm grateful, he said sincerely. Over the next hour, Daniel lingered at the diner longer than most customers would. He asked Maria about her day, about the diner, about her son, though she mentioned him only briefly. She was cautious, answering with short responses, suspicious of his intentions. She had been let down before, and she wasn't about to mistake kindness for something more. But Daniel wasn't the arrogant, dismissive man she expected a CEO to be. He listened. He laughed softly at her dry humor. He even admitted, without shame, that the pancakes she served him were the best meal he'd had in months, better than anything at my chef's table. That night, he returned. And the night after that. Within a week, the other waitresses had started whispering, curious about the handsome businessman who came in daily and insisted on sitting in Maria's section. She tried to ignore them, telling herself it meant nothing. Yet she couldn't deny the flicker of warmth in her chest whenever he walked through the door. One evening, as Maria wiped down a table, Daniel spoke up, his tone softer than usual. Maria, I know this might sound strange, but I feel calmer when I'm here. With you. It's like, he paused, searching for the words. Like I can breathe. Maria froze, her rag stilling in her hand. She wanted to laugh, to brush off his words as sweet talk. But when she looked at him, she saw sincerity. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like if he truly meant it. But reality pressed back hard. She was a single mom, barely making ends meet. He was a man with everything: wealth, power, choices. "Don't romanticize this," she said quietly. "You're from a world I'll never be part of. Whatever you're looking for, it's not me." Daniel leaned forward, his gaze steady. "That's where you're wrong. Your world, the simplicity, the honesty, the strength, you have no idea how rare that is. I've been surrounded by people who only want my money, my name, my influence. You saw me at my worst and still treated me like a human being. That's more than anyone else has done in years." Her heart clenched at his words, but fear held her back. Love, she knew, wasn't always enough to erase differences. Still, something in her softened. Maybe she wasn't ready to believe him, but she couldn't deny that he had already found a place in her life, however temporary. By the time he left that night, Maria stood at the window, watching his car pull away. She told herself she wouldn't get attached, that men like him didn't stay. Yet deep down, a spark had already been lit, one that frightened her almost as much as it excited her. What neither of them knew was that this fragile connection, born in a moment of drunken vulnerability and unexpected kindness, would grow strong enough to change both of their lives forever. The weeks that followed unfolded like chapters in a book neither Maria nor Daniel had expected to write. What began as chance encounters at the diner soon became something deeper. Daniel no longer came to the diner just for the coffee or the food, he came for Maria. For the way she looked him in the eyes without flinching. For the quiet strength she carried in her tired smile. For the reminder that life could be about more than stock prices, corporate takeovers, and champagne toasts that left him emptier than before. Maria resisted at first. She was cautious, protective of her heart, but more importantly, protective of her son. She knew too well how disappointment could ripple through a child's life. But Daniel was patient. He didn't push, instead, he simply showed up, day after day, conversation after conversation, proving that this wasn't a passing whim. One Saturday morning, Maria was fixing breakfast when the doorbell rang. Her son, Ethan, rushed to open it, his little feet pattering across the floor. Standing on the doorstep, holding a box of donuts and a sheepish grin, was Daniel. "Hope I'm not intruding," he said, lowering himself to Ethan's eye level. "I brought backup for breakfast." Ethan's eyes lit up. Donuts. Maria stood frozen for a moment, spatula in hand. No man had ever shown up at her door like this, not with food, not with laughter, not with genuine warmth in his eyes. Before she could protest, Ethan had already pulled Daniel inside, chattering about his favorite flavors. That morning, Daniel sat at the tiny kitchen table, eating scrambled eggs and listening as Ethan excitedly told him about school, his favorite cartoons, and his dream of becoming a soccer player. Instead of being bored or distracted, Daniel leaned in, asking questions, laughing at every silly joke. Maria watched from across the table, her heart softening against her will. Later, when Ethan ran off to play in his room, Maria finally spoke. "You don't have to do this. Spend time with him. Or with me." Daniel looked at her, his expression serious. "Maria, I want to. Do you know how many dinners I've had in the past year, sitting at a 10-foot dining table, surrounded by nothing but silence? Do you know how long it's been since I've heard a child laugh in my house?" His voice wavered, honesty bleeding through. "You and Ethan, you make me feel human again." Maria's breath caught. She wasn't used to men admitting vulnerability, especially men like him. But Daniel wasn't trying to impress her with grand gestures or expensive gifts. He was offering something much rarer: truth. Over time, Daniel's transformation became undeniable. He started leaving the office earlier, ignoring late-night business parties in favor of walks through the park with Maria and Ethan. He traded tailored suits for casual clothes when he visited her apartment, kneeling on the floor to help Ethan build Lego towers or reading bedtime stories with exaggerated voices that made the boy giggle until he fell asleep. Maria noticed the change in him. His laughter came easier, his eyes softened, and the weight he carried seemed lighter. She realized he wasn't just playing a part. He was allowing himself to feel, to live, to love. And for her, it was both beautiful and terrifying. One evening, as they strolled through the park, Ethan skipping ahead to chase fireflies, Daniel reached for Maria's hand. She stiffened at first, then let his fingers intertwine with hers. "You've changed me," he said quietly. Maria shook her head. "I didn't do anything. You did everything," Daniel insisted, his voice low but certain. "Before you, I was a man who thought success meant boardrooms and headlines. But you showed me that true success is coming home to someone who cares. It's hearing a child call your name. It's sitting at a kitchen table, eating eggs that are a little too salty but cooked with love." He chuckled softly, squeezing her hand. "Maria, I don't want to go back to the way things were." Her heart raced. She had been waiting for the catch, the moment when reality would remind her that men like Daniel didn't stay in the lives of women like her. Yet here he was, not only staying but building a new life alongside hers. Still, fear whispered in her ear late at night. What if this was temporary? What if he grew bored of the simplicity of her world? One evening, after tucking Ethan into bed, Maria found herself blurting out the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Why me, Daniel?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You could have anyone. Women who are younger, richer, more, your world. Why choose someone like me?" Daniel looked at her as if the answer were obvious. "Because none of them are you. They see what I have, not who I am. You see me, Maria, the man, not the title, not the bank account. You gave me kindness when I deserved judgment. You gave me hope when I had none left." His eyes glistened with emotion. "And because when I'm with you, I'm not the CEO. I'm just a man who loves you." Tears welled in Maria's eyes, spilling before she could stop them. She had spent so long being strong, so long carrying the weight alone, that hearing those words felt like finally laying down a burden she didn't know she was still holding. She whispered back, almost afraid of the truth, "I love you too." From that night forward, life didn't magically become perfect, but it became real. Daniel continued to balance his empire, but now he did it with a purpose beyond profits. Maria continued to work hard, but now she had a partner who supported her, who adored her son as if he were his own. What began as a rainy night encounter between a lonely single mom and a broken CEO transformed into something extraordinary, a family stitched together not by circumstance but by choice. And for both Maria and Daniel, that was the greatest fortune they could ever ask for.